I'll just announce that this is a meeting of the Deerfield Housing Production Plan Subcommittee. And we're starting at about 6:07 on Monday, November 4th. The agenda tonight will be to review results from the community workshop, review draft housing goals, and if we have time, begin discussing implementation strategies. So I think all of you were here for the workshop, right?
I was here for most of it.
Most of it? Okay. So I put together a summary of the results, and I can kind of go through how I broke everything down. I have an Excel file that has a lot more information than this because I went through and I kind of broke up Deerfield into sections, broke up the maps into different sections and tried to identify the types of housing and the amount of units that were placed in different sections. But basically the first table that you see here is the housing types that were chosen. So if you remember, we started out with kind of the status quo. So it was largely single-family homes to choose from, and then a smaller amount of two-family and multifamily flags. And so that each table chose to change the makeup a lot. So instead of going forward with that kind of housing makeup, it changed a lot. So you can see single-family homes, it ranged from 17% of the total units that were placed on the map to 20%. So that's pretty...
Can I just ask, what was the layout of the tables? 1, 2, 3?
I think it was, that's a good question. I think it was 1 was the closest one here, 2 was that one, and 3 was in the back.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And then, so that was interesting to see that's all around the same amount in terms of new single-family homes. And then two-family, you see that kind of ranged from 14% was table 3 up to 36% was table 2. Multifamily was all within 5 percentage, points of each other, 16 to 20%. Accessory apartments, 2 of the tables chose to place all 20 units of accessory units, and then 1 table, I think, only placed 4. And rehab also was a range of doing all 20, and then I think the other 2 were 14. So anyways, that's good to see that there's a willingness to kind of diversify the housing types in town moving forward. And then I included the blank flags that had housing units associated with them. Some of the blank flags were just more general or didn't actually say like how many units. So there were some co-housing flags that we talked about. That's kind of almost like a condominium type development with community resources. Assisted living, that came up at 2 tables specifically. There's quite a few assisted living units that were identified. And then conservation subdivision, that was something that one of the groups was interested in, and so that would conserve some of the space as open space. There is mixed use on Route 5 and 10, some units there. St. James Church and Rectory, which we can talk about a little bit later when we get into more specific about sites. And then more mixed use. In terms of affordable units, there was none of the groups actually placed that I think it was 209. It was a lot of units had to be placed to make up so that Deerfield would get to that 10% goal. None of the tables did quite that much, but it ranged from 22% of all of the units placed were affordable to 43%. So that's a good amount.
It's a start.
Yeah. And so this breaks it out by affordable units, senior units, and then affordable and senior units. So if you look at the bottom, if you subtracted, the affordable and senior units from affordable units, you would get the amount that was just affordable, not senior and affordable. It was a little confusing trying to figure out how to present that. So, are there any comments, like, looking at this?
When you talk about rehab substandard housing,
Yep.
and you refer to them as new units, do we have a sense of how many existing vacant substandard units there are?
Well, for the exercise, I think we allowed up to 20 units, and that was originally based on census data on substandard housing units in town, which I think was estimated to be 19, but the census can be wildly off on things that specific. But I talked to the building commissioner before the workshop to see what he thought in terms of kind of an accurate number to work with, and he thought 20 would be good, and he said it's probably on the conservative side.
20 units only?
Yeah, like of existing housing, so it's existing
Right.
housing units that would really be qualified as substandard, not really
Well, wouldn't
livable.
regional have an idea of regional housing where they,
That's me.
where you guys are administering that loan? I mean, how many people have
But
applied?
the distinction I'm trying to make is substandard housing versus substandard vacant housing. I mean, this talks about new units, so it's.
Yeah, this is really
Talking
trying to
about
get at
bringing new
vacant, substandard vacant, like substandard to the point where really no one should be living there. I think that's what we were trying to get at.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, it's, you were trying to create additional new units. There could very well, I'd say it's between 20 and 25% is probably the number I would use about units, housing units in Deerfield that could very well have some code violation. It could be not so.
Yet? That's all you would,
20 to 25%
Percent.
of total housing. So that's a lot more than 20 units.
And we're talking about things that, could be fairly minor code violation. They haven't had an electrical upgrade. They're not compliant with current code.
the amount of elderly homeowners, I would think it would be higher than that.
Well, and so that's not what I was talking about when we're talking about rehab substandard housing. It wasn't. It was more like the census defines it as homes without, I think, plumbing and I forget what the other kitchen facilities, like homes that are like really, really deficient. Yeah.
And I guess what I was trying to get my head around is, are there, and I haven't observed this, and that's why I was surprised by the number, are there housing units that are in bad condition that are vacant here in Deerfield? And that's my question. And how many are those, and are they concentrated in a part of the town?
I guess I don't know. I don't know. I think the building, when I talked to the building commissioner, he seemed to think maybe we were talking about that situation too. I guess we didn't clarify exactly what we meant by substandard, but it sounds like it's probably more than 20 units that would maybe meet what you're talking about, where they're vacant, they're in really bad shape. But I don't know. I didn't ask him that specific question. I mean, there was discussion amongst the table I was at least, of housing that at least the participants felt was in need of rehabbing, but that maybe wasn't to the level of this kind of.
Or maybe they weren't vacant units.
Right, yeah.
See, I think we were focused on bringing units into service.
Right.
Because you need these additional units. If they're already occupied, then it's not an additional unit. It's fixing up an existing.
Right.
Two separate things.
Yeah, and that's what the rehab substandard housing was meant to be, bringing units online that currently just are not habitable, that aren't being lived in, that aren't so that's what that was meant to be. That's what the 20 units was meant to be.
So that
20 units or 20%?
20 units for that definition. And that's just an estimate, and the building commissioner felt it might be a a conservative estimate, but it made sense to use for the purpose of the exercise. And then, yeah, so are there any other questions about just the housing distribution, the type? So then the next table gets to the location. And I broke it down. You'll see the kind of general locations. And if you want to open up one of the maps, we can, if you want to see what I used. But the Oxford site, I separated that out just to see what the tables came up with, because that was a focus for each table. And then South Deerfield Village, which includes the Oxford site.
How many acres are left in the Oxford site? Somebody said 12 point something?
They figure about 14 acres, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they said that the garage took some.
Well, originally,
Took 2 acres.
yeah, originally it was 16, I think a little over 16 acres. So with the garage factored in, it's, I think you're right, about 14 acres left.
Because I keep hearing 12 floating around town.
I don't know.
I talked to the highway super.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the number that I'd been using is that we had heard it was 16 acres to start, and then about 4 acres had been pulled off for the highway department.
So that'd be 12.
So that would be 12.
That's the number that I've heard kicked around, and that's what I've been using, so if I'm the source of that misinformation.
No, actually, you were not.
But I could be.
So as you can see, a lot of units were, so about 20%, anywhere from 13 to 20% of the total units that each table placed were at the Oxford site in various forms. South Deerfield Village also accounted for a large amount of future housing units, so anywhere from 43 to 67%. And then Southwest Deerfield is the area west of Interstate 91, but south of the Deerfield River. And that was pretty small. Not a lot of housing units were placed there. Northwest Deerfield was Upper and Lower Road area, and not a lot of housing units were placed there. Northeast Deerfield was kind of northern part of River Road, Pine Nook Road, Keats Road, areas kind of close to Old Deerfield, but Old Deerfield didn't have, no units were placed right in Old Deerfield Center. And that varied. Table 1 and 2 placed more housing units there, and Table 3 didn't put any. Central Southeast Deerfield is kind of the lower part of River Road, and the areas going over the ridge towards 5 and 10. So Hillside Road, North Hillside Road, and that also varied. Hi, Paul.
Hey, how are you doing?
So we're just going over the results of the workshop.
Oh, okay, good.
We just talked about the first table shows the housing type distribution amongst the different tables that were here at the workshop. So we just got done with that, and we were working on looking at the locations where new housing units were kind of focused. And so the central part of town, Table 1, put a lot of housing units there, 24% of their units, but the other tables didn't really focus on it much. And then routes 5 and 10, especially the area by North Main Street, the intersection with North Main Street, north to North Hillside Road, that kind of stretch that's got some commercial activity already. That was kind of the focus for the tables that did place units there, was kind of having some mixed use there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the averages on the side in terms of the areas that got the most.
I think one more interesting fact or tidbit to go along with this would have been, where do the people live who are sitting at what table?
Yeah, that
It was very clear.
yeah.
Preferences expressed.
Was it really?
Yes, there
Yeah,
was. And that's,
They were pretty funny about it.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, that is definitely true. But I think there was also some, like, I overheard some people, like, willingness of, like, putting some new housing units near where they live. Like, I don't know, it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, there was one table that was kind of coming over and watching the other tables, so.
Yeah. So are there any questions just about the general, locations of where housing units were placed?
Well, I mean, it looks like the Oxford was the site that was the most popular one for stuff.
Yeah, and and as you can see, the South Deerfield Village Center kind of numbers include the Oxford site,
Yeah.
since that's part of it.
Okay,
Is
yeah.
there really enough room in South Deerfield Village?
Well,
Enough
that
vacant property?
So
Oh, yeah, I think there is.
Is there?
Yeah, and when we talk about those percentages, that would have come out to, I brought my larger, I just used percentages to kind of make it easier, because different tables
Yeah.
place different numbers of total units. Not everyone got to the 252, which is understandable, because we didn't have a lot of time. And I did bring, I thought I brought the printout, but maybe I don't have it, shoot, of the numbers.
Oh, that's okay.
But I can always send it to you electronically. Of course, it was just an exercise too. We don't have all the facts and figures to know
Right.
exactly.
No.
But the idea was just to see where is new
Well, what
housing
would be
support.
interesting is to know the numbers for the 55% and
Yeah,
whatever.
I can get those to you. I'm sorry it's not in my head. right now.
Especially
It should be.
especially the Oxford site, what does that percentage mean? And
Yeah.
is it even feasible to put that amount of housing there? Not that I'm saying it isn't,
Yeah.
but,
Well, Table 1 was talking elderly.
Yep. Yeah, there was one that placed, one of the tables had a 50-unit senior housing, like 50 units of senior housing at Oxford. I think that was the highest amount of actual units. that
so I
were
mean,
placed there.
could you almost take these averages and multiply them by the 252 and come up with a number? Or is that not feasible to do?
Well, so not every table had 252 as their total unit count. So I did the percentages by their each table. The percentage is based on their total unit count, which is different for each table. So just to try to make it like easier to compare the tables, that's how I did it. So
Yeah, but if we took 252 as the figure that we need
yeah,
and say, okay, this is our percentages,
yeah, you could do that. But
and then break them out into numbers.
But what I'm
actual
saying
numbers.
is I can give you the actual numbers. I just don't have them with me. I should have printed them out and brought them, but I don't have them. Like the actual numbers of units that each table put. And I have it all broken down in lots and lots of charts.
Okay.
But rather than the absolute number that each table had, isn't the average of the three groups coming together and sort of a more meaningful number?
Yeah, like the average or even just the range to get an idea.
Well, I'm suspecting that at some point, this is aimed at trying to do something with zoning, so we are going to need to know the numbers and whatever eventually to, to kind of plan that.
Yeah, and we can,
That can come later. That's
yeah.
okay.
And I actually did bring some information about, density and things like that, that we can talk about. So, I'm sorry I didn't bring the actual numbers. But the Deerfield Village Center does include kind of that inset that we were looking at the map, which I can just roll up the map. So it's not just like right in downtown. It does include the residential neighborhoods around it. So it would have included all of this, and I even went up a little bit, kind of up North Main Street some, because that seems like so that whole area basically is what I meant by South Deerfield.
So it goes North Main to 116?
I think it went basically from about Jackson Road was, I think, where I had the cutoff down to, it did include 116. There really wasn't much, no one put housing right down here, but yeah, it came down to here. So it would be kind of this.
Well, down where your fingers are, isn't that the cemetery? No?
Well, there's a cemetery here,
No.
and then this is the industrial park. no one put housing below 116, basically,
Right,
is what I'm
right,
saying.
yeah.
But that's all industrial, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
some housing down there, is it that?
Oh,
Well,
just
there's
right
some
here
on
is a
the
little bit,
end
yes.
of it there, but not much.
So when I'm, that's what I mean by that on these tables. And I have pictures that I didn't bring, but we took pictures of all the maps, like with the flags in them. So we have those, and I can include those, as an appendix to the plan, so that people can actually see like what it looks like, and where the flags are kind of concentrated. But it was.
And did you already go over, oh, you did, this first section here?
Yep.
Talks about what the percentages were for each type of
Housing.
housing.
Yep. And then the next page, what I did was I broke it down based on the kind of average percentages from the previous table. I broke it down into areas that it seemed like the groups wanted to target new housing development, and then areas that were more for limited development in the future. And I kind of bulleted some of the notes that the tables made for each of the different sites. So, and if anything is missing from this, or if you have questions about it, we can talk about it now. But it seemed like the Oxford site was an obvious target. And there was, I think every table talked about mixed use there. So that would be, retail, commercial, have some shops, along with housing. And they also, a lot of the groups talked about having a mix of housing there. So that could be senior, definitely senior, seemed to be one element, as well as market rate housing and affordable housing, so kind of a mix. Assisted living, 2 of the groups talked about having assisted living facility at the Oxford site. And then there was a desire for it to be kind of an extension of the village center or the downtown, not kind of this separated development. Does that sound?
I'm not totally sure. Say that again?
The extension of downtown, that part? Oh, just to have it kind of connect with the rest of the town rather than have it feel like, you're going into a separate development from downtown. That was a comment from the table I was at.
And a table one mentioned having possibly some retail stores, restaurant. That kind
Now,
of
where
stuff.
was table 1 and 2 and 3? Where was
So, yeah, 1 was in this corner, 2 was over here,
Okay.
and 3 was in the back.
Okay.
So you must have been at 2.
I was at this one. Is that 2?
Yep, that's
yeah, I was at
2. And then South Deerfield Village, which would include Oxford, there seemed to be support for small-scale infill development, which was, I know at least my group, we talked about kind of little places where you could fill in with a home or two or few duplexes, things like that. Rehab, substandard housing, a lot of those flags were in the South Deerfield Village Center area. Also, it seemed like there were some ideas about adaptive reuse of buildings that currently aren't housing, which was something that, leading into the exercise, it didn't seem like Deerfield had a lot of those opportunities, but some of the groups came up with ideas, which I think, as part of the implementation strategies for this plan, we actually have to try to identify specific sites and properties so we can kind of revisit those. Accessory apartments were pretty popular in the village center. Also just a mix of housing types. There were single family, 2-family, multifamily, mix of affordable senior and market rate. Some rental apartments were noted on flags. And also there were a couple tables noted either adding a new road or a conservation subdivision. So that's a larger scale kind of infill in the village center. And then the routes 5 and 10 section, which would be, if we're looking at the map, if you can see, this was kind of the section that was targeted. And so there was ideas for adding duplexes or multifamily, mixed use, some adaptive reuse here.
What
I
are we
think
using for a definition of adaptive?
adaptive reuse is when you have an existing structure that's currently not used for housing. Maybe it used to
St.
be
James Church.
Yeah, it was a church. In some of the other towns, older mill towns, mills
Right.
are often reused for housing.
The street you're pointing to, which street is that?
Right here?
Yeah.
This is 5 and 10.
5 and 10,
Yeah.
okay.
And there
So
was-
that's up by the Butterfly Museum people, or
The Butterfly Museum, I think, is
up there?
this one. So
Okay.
that's at the northern reach of it.
Yep, mm-hmm,
And then
okay.
there was a note of a few business. One was, I think, the Gables Restaurant.
That Gables Restaurant, yeah, that's across from.
And there's also is the auction house, or I
Yep.
passed by it, there's a big
Yes.
building. for
Douglas.
sale.
Douglas
Yeah.
Auction.
So there was talk about some of those buildings potentially being housing. And also a senior housing or assisted living facility, and just, again, a mix of affordable senior and market rate housing in that area. So then the areas that had less, that had some housing placed there, but much less, were northeast Deerfield. And that was where one of the groups identified co-housing. There was some single-family and two-family. A few rehab flags were up there. And that was also a mix of affordable market rate and senior in that area. But it was to a much lesser degree.
And that was all in the residential agricultural zone, right?
Yep. Yeah, that whole area is. And then in terms of the more central, kind of this area, that was.
Along the river, probably, more than.
Yeah, there were some in here, like on the hillside road area, and also River Road. That was single-family, duplex, multifamily, mix of affordable market rate and senior, and some accessory apartments, and also conservation subdivision in that area. Northwest Deerfield up here was mostly just single-family placed there, and again, a limited, not a lot, and some two-family or multifamily. And there was very few affordable or senior units placed in that area.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lack of being near anything.
Right, yeah. It's much more remote or rural. And then, southwest Deerfield, kind of this area, again, was mostly single-family. There are a few duplex flags over here, but again, limited to no affordable or senior units in this area, and pretty limited. I think this was one of the lowest in terms of adding units. These areas were pretty low.
That seemed to have some issues with water.
Yes, this area has had issues with septic and high water table, definitely. So that's the.
The thing we didn't have at the meeting was the size of the Oxford lot. We talked about 16 acres, but nobody said, yeah, we just took 4 acres out for a highway garage, so that was.
Well, that's why in my
We did that earlier tonight.
Yeah.
Did you?
We were
Okay.
just talking about that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's
Well,
why in my presentation, I think I had 16 acres in the presentation, but then I said it was probably a couple less than that. But there's variations between whether it's 12 acres or 14 acres left.
Who is that fellow Vern who was sitting at our table?
Oh, he's from the.
He's the assistant building inspector, I think.
Okay.
He also has Thayer Street Associates.
Oh, Vern.
Yeah,
Vern
Harrington, yeah. Yeah, because I know that the A&R came to us for the DPW, and it was pretty close to 4 acres.
He was the one
Yeah,
that night mentioned that it was down to 12.
yeah.
Okay.
So 12 is a pretty good
So
number.
that sounds like it's.
Well,
more accurate.
the other thing too that may happen is that there's a 3/4 of an acre where the old DPW is, which I assume will be thrown in there. So it could be 13 acres by the time they get done.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
assistant building inspector?
Well, yes, I don't know if he has his title, but he is out there doing some of the building inspections when the building inspector's not there.
It's a professional contractor.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I'm wondering how that can happen.
Well, they had a special, there was a special article on a town meeting some time ago for electrical inspectors, plumbing inspectors, and for him, because there's a lot of professionals in town that do the inspections, so they had to make up
Right.
an exception for him to do that.
Well, Mal is the plumbing, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I have to make sure, I think he wanted to be notified, but I don't know if I had his information. But I will make sure he's included on these discussions. So, and again, so when we talk about specific sites to target, there was discussion, again, of obviously the Oxford site, the Hotel Warren came up, King Philip. I wasn't sure what that was. I had a question mark. Do you know what that's meant?
that's a side road up.
Oh, so that's a road, okay.
It's a road. It's a little development kind of thing.
Oh, okay. So there's a note about having senior housing. I wasn't sure if that was an actual property or site.
Yeah, that's,
Does that road go all the way through?
no.
Nope.
Oh.
I've been doing pavement management, which is we just drive around and look at the pavement for Deerfield. And there's a lot of cul-de-sacs and dead ends, like a lot.
Yeah. Well, where's the water department there? Which road does that come off from?
That's
Mackey
off
Ave?
of, isn't that off of 116? It's
Well,
right
it also comes around and comes back onto
okay.
Sugarloaf Street.
Right.
I see.
Yeah.
That's the water sewer pipe,
Um,
right? Yeah, so it's the sewer pipe.
yeah, the red.
Okay.
Isn't the one after Gramacki?
Well, it's somewhere right around there. It's somewhere right around there, yeah.
Just before the real estate place.
Yep, yep.
Okay, so that was just a road, but the
Road behind the hotel.
No.
former,
Yep.
Does that exist? Is that a street?
it is, it's kind of, it's strange.
It's sort of a big parking lot, isn't it?
Where are you at? Is that out behind the the old video store? Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know.
It's behind the Chinese diner? Isn't that where you're talking about?
Yeah, that was, that area, I know my table was interested in that area as infill.
Well, somebody just, I think, made two, I don't think it's called elderly housing, but the old video store.
For accessible units.
Is that on?
Yeah, is that what they,
South
I know there was something went on with that.
Main? Oh, okay.
Tina Drive, yeah, Tina Drive, yep.
It's that little street that.
Goes down,
Is this it?
yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
must be
it's right.
that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's right there. It's that building right there.
Oh,
He
okay.
had ground level commercial space that they converted to residential.
Two apartments downstairs, I guess. Does that sound right? Two apartments? Yeah.
Cool. So other sites that had been mentioned was the former Gables Restaurant, which you said that's on 510?
Yeah, they call it Greenfield Road.
Sorry.
It's up there just before Hillside Ave on the right. There's a space, there's open field between the Gables and Hillside Road, but.
It's attorney's offices now.
Okay, so there's something
I don't
in
know if
there.
it still is. Doris Bilodeau had her offices there, and of course, she died a few years ago, so.
Okay,
No.
There's also other professionals
In that building, yeah,
Yeah,
professional office space, right.
okay. St. James Church and Rectory, and is that on North Main Street?
North Main Street, yeah.
North Main Street, yeah.
Okay,
It's right at the intersection of Pleasant.
okay.
Okay.
Is it at Pleasant? Because that's where
No.
Cowan's is, that old Cowan's garage.
Right.
It's on the corner of Pleasant and North Main.
You said it's 85?
It's 83,
83,
85.
85? Yep. Okay. And then I couldn't remember what this was called, but I think is it Jerry's Place, is that in the corner?
Mm-hmm.
There was
The
talk of
restaurant,
the
yeah.
apartments, there are
Upstairs.
apartments upstairs. So it sounds like there's already units there?
There are,
but-
there's a bunch
I
of.
think somebody
units.
said Mike McGrath owns it, he's from
Yes.
out of town.
So that's what I had from the notes. But maybe what we can, I guess what I want to do actually, I'm sorry to backtrack just a little bit, is to put this in the context of what we need to do for the plan. So let me just, where did that go? This is a very detailed outline of the housing production plan, which I've passed out in the past, so it might not be anything new to some of you. But what we need to do is, we've already talked about the comprehensive housing needs assessment in past meetings. We've talked about development conditions and constraints. So what we're on now is number 4, housing goals, which is on the second page. So these are requirements that the Department of Housing and Community Development kind of has an outline of what you need to include in your housing production plan. So that's where this language is coming from mostly. So in terms of housing goals, we have to determine the mix of housing types that are desired in the community, consistent with community needs and regional needs. So that would be where we talk about single family, 2-family, multifamily, apartments, condos, etc. So that's one thing that we got out of the workshop, was kind of the starting point to discuss that. And then another thing we have to do is determine areas in town to target housing development and or rehabilitation. So that's what we were just talking about in terms of the areas that came out of the workshop as areas to target. And then within that, we have to identify kind of the preferred characteristics of development in those areas. So we also were just talking about that a little bit. And then, oh, it's not on here. It's down further. I'm sorry. And then for the implementation strategies, which gets into more detail, that's where we have to actually identify town-owned parcels where the town may pursue development of some affordable units in the future, but also privately owned buildings or parcels that the town would support the owner developing housing. So that's why I made this list of specific sites that came up during the workshop, because they seemed like it served as a starting point for that specific strategy. So I guess what I want to do now is that we've gone through all this information. Before we actually get into talking about what the goals could be for the plan, is there any other information that you think is missing here that came out of the workshop that you heard, or any questions about any of this before we move forward?
I guess I'll just suggest that at the tail end of the workshop, there was that conversation about the work that the town has done around Complete Street and the downtown, the South Deerfield Village planning, and connecting it to here. That seemed like the town invested a lot of energy in the community conversation last year. It looked like it was very well attended, very much engaged, a number of people. And just to make that connection.
Connecting it to this plan?
Well, somebody's writing up something. Did it come up at one of the meetings that some places is starting to write up some grants for the implementation of that? Did you hear that too, or did I hear that somewhere else?
Well, we had talked about there's a grant opportunity for technical assistance. It's called the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative program, and it provides grants up to $10,000 for assistance in working on some aspect of downtown kind of revitalization or downtown economic development. So that was a discussion that was going on. But at this point, the town's not planning on applying for the grant.
Okay.
It would take a town board or committee or group that's interested in being the lead for that type of grant application, because I think that's where the issue is having someone at the town level who is willing to be kind of like the lead and the point person for it.
Did they come up with a finalization as to what should be done?
Oh, yeah, they did.
Well, the downtown livability plan has recommendations. It has a lot of design kind of concepts and scenarios for streetscape and open spaces. It has recommendations for improving the sidewalks and biking in the village center, and it has actual kind of design, a design of how to connect the Oxford site to the rest of the village in terms of the circulation to get in and out of the site. A lot of, it had to do with those types of things. So that's kind of trying to not lose the, the interest that had been gained during that process, because that plan just wrapped up in this spring. So.
And it just seems like, there's that good engaged community effort.
Yeah.
Then there's this discussion about the housing needs.
Mhm.
It's clear that a lot of the conversation is, focusing in the South Deerfield Village. And then the town, from what I understand, is planning to put out the RFP for the Oxford site in the fall, soon.
Well, within the next 2 weeks.
That's soon.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's.
Well,
what
that was
Wendy's-
one thing I was missing at the meeting the other night was the layout of what they had in mind. Because there is a layout somewhere, and we didn't have that here.
I don't know about. It didn't sound like, from what I understood.
It wasn't specific layouts, but it was general kind of,
Okay.
what was going to be there.
Yeah, what I heard from Wendy was that there weren't any specific uses being proposed in the RFP, but obviously in 2008, what I presented at the workshop was just the kind of the preferred development scenario, which was a mixed-use scenario with some housing, but not a lot of housing.
No.
I think it was 20 units.
Well, the way I understood it is they were trying to replace the taxes that were there in some kind of a balancing thing between
Right.
residential or retail and then industrial too. So
Yep.
it was a mixed use intent there.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, but from what I understand, there's no specific recommendations of uses going into the RFP. That's at least what I understand. But I know it's supposed to go out within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
And they are planning on including the plan, the livability plan, within the RFP, asking anyone who's going to answer the RFP to go to the town website and look at the plan as a starting point, it sounds like. So that's really good that they're putting that in there. So in terms of the draft, currently I have included elements of the downtown livability plan where it seemed appropriate to mention it. But if there's more to it that I should add, we can definitely do that. So, all right, sorry.
I didn't mean to distract you, just.
No, that's okay. I think if we can somehow tie, I'm doing the same thing. I'm also working with the Open Space Committee in town and the Recreation Department on updating the Open Space and Recreation Plan, and we're wrapping that up in the next month or so too. And that action plan has a lot of basically saying implement the recommendations from the downtown livability plan related to sidewalks or related to, all these different elements from it. So it's kind of just trying to kind of keep that momentum going and kind of keep referring back to this recent, effort that was completed. So anywhere where we can make those connections, I think it definitely makes sense to make those connections. All right, so to get onto the housing goals, we don't have to like come up with an exact, like, number or percentage of, say, this is the percent of single family and this is the percent of two family. But in general, I think what would be useful is to have some kind of statement that conveys, at least what came out of the workshop is, it seems like the town is interested, or at least the community who has been participating is interested in changing the trend of housing in town in the future and diversifying it more with different types of housing. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah, and again, I'm talking from the zoning side of it.
Yeah.
Is there anything laid out that other towns did for their zoning, say within the Central Village District, as to how to zone for this stuff? Because that's all going to be new.
Yeah,
all going to be new zoning. It's not
I
going
have
to be
some. If we can just get through the more general goals
Okay,
quickly,
right, yep.
because if we can just get through that and kind of agree in general what the goals should be, and then I can go right up.
Okay, right.
I have specific zoning information that I wanted to get into if we had time, because that is a big part of it. You're right.
Yep.
Okay, so would it be accurate to use the results of the workshop to develop a goal of what the future housing types in town should be?
Well, you reviewed that.
Yeah.
And maybe I missed some of this, but are there any generalities that come out of this that say this here, that there, and so forth? Because it sounds a little bit like if you were in residential agricultural, it's mostly single family and maybe some duplexes, and then if you were in Central Village CVRD, that you were the 4 unit or 8 unit buildings and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right for the most part. Though it was interesting how in some areas that are more outlying, there were definitely groups that put duplex and multifamily, even some
Or
in
the
outlying.
Conservation stuff in the
Yeah,
outline.
but more of like the conservation
Yeah.
subdivision or co-housing development. So that would be, not necessarily single family, but it obviously could be single family. And that kind of gets to the second goal too, which is where you're identifying the areas in town and the types of development you want in each
Right.
area. So I think you're right though about that in general.
So maybe we should kind of get some generalization of what's going to be, what was anticipated to be where.
So building on that, let's start with the areas in kind of the residential agricultural district, like you just mentioned, which would be pretty much
Everything but the Central Village,
everything
right?
but the Central Village
Yep.
area and some parts of 5 and 10, which are
Well, I think you
commercial.
pointed out along the, is it Mill Village Road, that you were pointing out the single families and then some duplexes, and I think there was some conservation over here on the river side of town.
There was. So in general, if development occurs in the RA district outside of the villages, outside of what is sewered, certainly, there's some areas that have water, then it's going to be kind of limited amounts of single-family, conservation subdivision, that type of development, maybe some duplexes.
Yeah, or the mother-in-law type apartments or something like that,
Yes,
too.
that's a good point, too.
Accessory apartments.
So,
Wait a minute, we're saying in agricultural residential, we don't want anything other than,
No, I'm trying to take what Alyssa has here from the meeting and trying to generalize what the results are, and it sounds like what I heard said that in the residential agricultural area, okay, which is the RA
I don't get
district.
that at all.
Okay.
what did you get?
I mean, well, the table I was at, we talked about co-housing being in an agricultural residential area.
Yep, that's what we were just saying, yep. The co-housing would be the would be taking an old renovation or
No,
rehabbing.
co-housing
wasn't
would
it?
be like condos.
Yeah,
With a shared
co-housing-
facility.
Okay, I misunderstood that term then.
It's usually, I mean, you're talking about 12, 15, 20 units of housing.
Oh, okay, so it's a larger developments. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could think of it as, I mean, I guess it's kind of like a subdivision, but normally it's.
It's like a whole lot of
Denser,
small houses. where
high-density
people have
housing.
their own
Yeah,
little
it's
living,
clustered
but then they
more.
have
Yeah.
a big room that they can use for like community room.
Right.
Yeah,
Recreation room
I
kind of
guess
thing.
I don't see that as being a good thing to be out from town, because then what are you going to do? You're going to have to put in buses or
The
something to get people
The people
there.
aren't necessarily invalids or elderly.
Yeah, there's
It's
examples.
It's like an intentional housing community.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Only instead of living in one big house, everyone has their own house, and the community that they
Mhm.
share is really in the common area.
Sure. So
Yeah,
were there
sometimes
many
they
of
don't
those
have-
in the outlying areas?
There were, I know that one table, there's one table that talks specifically about co-housing, and they had identified.
Up by the railroad yards, which,
No, not the rail yard, but along River Road area,
Right.
that section. And I forget if it was, yeah, but it was mostly, I think, where they identified the co-housing was in like the rural agricultural area.
okay, all right, I didn't get that from what you're saying,
In
so
a
that's
way,
good.
it's also similar in terms of just thinking of the development pattern. I mean, it's not that different from a conservation subdivision, which normally clusters homes in one area. It doesn't necessarily have the same ownership pattern, because those might just be single-family homes and you have your own lot and that's it. You might have a homeowners association, but not the rest of it, but
You wanna
it's
come
not
down
that
here, Rachel?
different.
Yeah, sit over there by Alyssa.
Oh, okay.
And there are several co-housing units in the valley.
Yep.
There's 2 in Amherst, there's 2 in Northampton.
The one,
Quite a few on the Cape.
the one that I'm most familiar with is in Northampton, and that's in Florence, so it's like outside of town. It's its own little community. It's really nice.
Mhm.
So here, that's what we've been
Over there.
looking at.
That was what they were.
Yep.
Up in this area, yeah.
They try to be affordable with no matter what it be.
No, they're condos. We call them Canadian condos. That's what we call them in our group. Canadian condos. Well, they're just kind of groovy. And they have a shared, this, that, and the other thing, but they're essentially condominiums that people own. They can pass on ownership,
Yeah.
and it's a different kind of zoning. That's the thing. A lot of it is
Yeah,
that
it's gonna
the
be-
zoning changes, and
Mhm.
it's a little bit what Eaglebrook is. We have like, it's a kibbutz. Everybody does their thing, and then all the property around it is shared. But
Yeah.
the zoning is pretty.
Yeah, and I know, like in Florence, they have they don't have their own individual driveways and parking. Like they have shared parking areas,
Right.
and so then you have paths that lead to all the houses, and so it's just it's a
Mhm.
different way to organize it. So we were just talking about general goals following this lovely. So those are the results broken down by housing type and location. And so now we're talking about the housing goals for the plan. And the first one is to talk about mix of housing types desired in the community in general. And we kind of talked about that because that came through in the workshop. But now we're talking about areas of town and what type of development is desired in different areas, kind of in general.
Meetings and stuff.
What's that? Oh.
I didn't realize it was solid cars in
Well,
Sorry.
it should have been 7 actually because it was.
No, it's just our meetings are usually at 6.
Yeah, I know,
And so
I know.
and usually we have ours at 6 because
Six.
the other one is
I
at
know.
7.
And so Alyssa sent out a note saying, well, since there's no planning board, well, let's go to
This
8
is-
instead of
Yeah.
stop at 7.
We're so used to
I
staying.
saw
We were
that.
at town meeting till 11.
Oh, I know,
last week,
10:30,
so-
that's right. Yep.
Yeah, thank you for coming, those
No,
of you
no,
on the
it's-
planning
no,
board.
no.
So we were just talking about, we were starting with the more rural areas that didn't get as many of the flags, that were kind of more limited in development, but there were areas of town that, we talked about they were tended to be single-family, duplex, but there were some instances of other types. So the conservation subdivision, the co-housing. There were also a few flags, I think, from your table for rehabbing. And so there may be older structures that are,
Well, I would think Sugarloaf Street has that opportunity
That's
for
what
the
we
rehabbing, yeah.
talked a lot about
Yeah.
houses in the center of town.
so that's center town, okay.
Yeah.
So not in the rural district as much.
Well, maybe out there too, but.
Well, we had talked to, I mean, I
Well,
think-
that could be more
sorry,
general
yeah.
too.
Mhm.
Sorry.
So when you're talking about goals, you're just saying, mixed, you're talking about what types of, I don't understand how that's a housing goal, mixed types of housing. I don't understand.
The
Sorry,
first
I'm being
one?
foolish.
It's so it's the whole idea of the current housing trends is that it's 75 or 70% single family,
Right, in town.
10% duplex, 10%. So it's moving forward. Kind of, what are your goals in terms of housing types? And so we talked about how there's definitely, from the workshop and from our discussions, a desire to diversify that. So that can be one general goal.
Mhm.
The next general goal is, okay, now looking at the areas in town, where do we want to focus housing? Where do we kind of want limited development? And what types of development in those areas? So we're actually starting with the more rural areas, which saw, limited housing units, but when you do develop there, what are the general types of development you're looking for? And so we came up with single-family duplex, conservation subdivision, co-housing, but to a limited.
There was
scale.
some sense that we thought this would be available potentially for but that there was this is over.
Where is that?
Heritage Way, so Lee Road,
Oh,
around
okay,
here.
yeah, out by the,
That
okay.
there's room for some, not necessarily affordable housing, but if
Sand
you're,
Gully Road.
right, some area where if you're
Mhm.
just building housing inventory,
Mhm.
also, like cluster development, whatever, I
Yep.
love that sounds.
High density.
Conservation
high
and
density.
Right.
Well, not
that you
necessarily.
could-
It's just instead of having the housing spread out across a whole parcel,
Right.
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
clustering it so you can conserve some of the
So in
land.
fact,
Right, right.
Yeah.
that was possible out here. The other thought was that although it's not ideal for assisted living, it's not terrible for assisted living either, because it is another area of some concentration of population. So this would be more ideal, but you didn't want to keep throwing everything into downtown.
Right, yeah.
And if there was another site, it would be out here where there's just a little bit more population and a little bit more, there are already condominiums, so, maybe you build off some of that condominium site and you think about assisted living where you'd have potential for a range of, once again, in the affordable housing idea that you'd have assisted living in a place where it had a range of access points.
Yep.
Financially.
Okay.
So that was one thought.
How many units are there at the Heritage Condominium?
How many which?
How many units? Is that a big condominium?
What, the Heritage?
Yeah.
I'd say there's probably about 50.
Yeah, pretty decent.
Yeah.
And there's another one on the other side up by the pig
They're
farm.
pretty upscale too, they're not, right,
Yeah. Well, the other part of town.
Stillwater Road, right.
Stillwater Road, and then there's that
Along
one
here,
down
yeah.
there that's off of
Dunkin'
Lee
Drive.
Road,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
it's funny because
So
they
they're
actually
two,
abut
they-
each other,
they do.
but they don't go through.
They look the same,
Right, right.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
but they're
Yeah.
not, so, and you can't get there from here.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Well,
which
around.
is like
But
a lot of the roads.
but it is a lot of people, I don't know, I'm
There
just
is a lot
saying.
of people there, yeah.
And that would be a place where you could have
A similar kind of thing. I don't know if those are affordable or not, are they?
They're not.
I
No.
don't think so.
No, they're pretty,
Upscale, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
and there's a place where the zoning was, you just drive up there and you're like, nobody talks to their neighbors, and, I mean,
Uh-huh.
there's no, it kills you, I think, it kills me. I mean, my parents live down here, it's the house we have, and, everybody likes their plot of land, but this one, their plots of land have no character.
No, that's true.
So it's not like,
That's right.
it's not like homesteads that have
Yeah.
been there or developed.
And then they have common garages and,
Yes, so they're living kind of close together, but not, you know,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's one of those bizarre accordion things, but.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's good, and if we think of anything else for the rural areas.
Oh, but the other, oh, yeah, it's not rural, but the other places that was along 5 and 10.
Yep.
And potentially, yeah.
Whopping.
They were talking about Pine Neck Road, I kept pushing it beyond Pine Neck Road. Topography is very bad up there, it's really bad.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, yeah, doesn't it, like,
Well, but the
It's
part
like
of the
dirt.
point is.
But what a
it's
view.
Dirt.
it's really, it doesn't
We
even
walk
look like
it.
you can go through.
You can. We walk it all the time. We kept saying, this would be terrible. Like, you have to have a massive four-wheel drive
Yeah.
vehicle to get through there. And this is, you know, the idea is that this is
Ridge.
preserved land.
Right,
This
yeah.
This is so the optimal for the town would be for this not to be developed at
Right.
all. You know, this passing is not very good. But there was somebody. And then this River Road is actually, you know, got development potential, but again, a lot of the topography is really challenging. It's not ideal, and it has no public transportation and no
Yeah, well,
Right,
that was the thing.
services, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was why it was more limited, but when development does happen.
And did
what-
we decide that old Deerfield was kind of hard to do anything with?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It just falls it off, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, there's one of the places along this, if this county road has potential. I
Yeah,
think
and
it
that was
does.
noted, yeah, that was
This
on
is our
one of
group.
the,
That was my idea. I think that, I think, again, because, like, the assisted living or whatever, because of the proximity to these high-density areas, and it's got development potential all along there, and they're actually bringing it further and further out all the time. I mean, these people who are bringing it out, of course, are bringing it out to be further and further away from their, you know, have their
Get away from
privacy
the,
and-
yeah.
But there's space there, and, you know, we're looking at it too. Eddie Burke developing that more and more.
okay. It's almost an extension
Yeah,
of the village.
and it has that proximity, you can walk into.
Mhm.
Okay, so then areas to target housing, where's my handout went? I just had it. Maybe I gave it to you.
Me?
Oh, no, this is it. You have yours.
Yeah.
If you turn the page, you'll see the bulleted areas. So we can note the village center, South Deerfield Village, so to target. But this is basically, if we agree on kind of what's here, I can just write these up basically as goals, but I want to make sure we go through and identify anything else. But in general, talking about Oxford site, mixed use, mix of housing types, especially, but having some kind of senior component. That sound good?
Again, those are zoning changes.
Yeah, and this is general, meant to be
Now,
general.
I
and then we'll
don't
get
see
into
you
the
listing the
specifics.
senior, because there were some stickers on some of them that, you know, said seniors or,
Yep.
you know, different stickers.
Yeah, and that-
Where did those fall in these target areas?
So that's why I put in Oxford Senior is definitely there. South Deerfield Village Center. I can send you my.
It says senior there, did you see it?
What's that?
It says senior there, mix of housing, senior market rate, and
Oh, right down here, yeah.
and it also the.
But I'm
Yep.
thinking that, yeah, okay. But you see, those had stickers, and that's why I thought those were like a subcategory of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's
Or
why
an
it's here,
overlay
though.
kind of thing, you know, as to,
Yeah, I can send you my my tables that have specifically the number of stickers of each type and whether they're senior
Well,
or
I'm-
affordable in each unit.
well, no, I'm not,
so that
I'm
you
not
can see
interested in
specifically.
I'm not interested in the stuff that makes up the thing.
Yeah.
But maybe some generalizations of these different sites and,
Right.
and what those things were.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. So I'm saying for Oxford, definitely senior was an emphasized
Okay.
All
right.
component.
And,
That's why I
and
have
also
that
with the
there.
village?
And also in the village. So the village was.
So those two were kind of this focus for senior, or were there other?
There was,
5 and 10 too.
yeah, there were senior, along 5 and 10 in that section. There were several.
Right, but I'm looking down here, you've got the northeast Deerfield, the central and south, there's not a high emphasis on senior there. So it's basically 5 and 10 and the central village, right? What's that?
Yeah, I think so. I think in the River Road, Pine Note, Keats Road, there were some senior units identified there.
Well, from what we heard at the senior center, I mean, they're looking for more, building something that's close to town.
Yep.
That's walking distance and that kind of stuff. So that's why I kind of focused that senior. Now, that doesn't mean that people, that are in their 70s or whatever
Right.
don't want to live out in the country too. I mean, that's fine too, but I think what you typically think of the senior housing is
not Keats Road.
is not out in the country part, it's in the center of town, so.
Yep. No, and I think that's a good point to bring in that other input that we received. And then the other thing is too, helping seniors who are living in the more rural areas either modify or add
An apartment.
accessory apartment.
That was the other thing, those were the two things they brought up.
Yeah,
Yep.
so you're right.
That just seems like low line.
So that kind of senior housing out in the, I see that as different than
Okay,
Then,
so I'll make a note of that.
housing with a, special kind of bathtub and, all the accessories.
Sell all the property, they can all sell.
That's all protected though.
I know.
So in the village, senior housing, definitely. In the village and in Oxford. Mixed use in both areas. Infill development. I mean, Oxford itself is infill, but.
I'd say mostly Sugarloaf Street, that's what we did, is infill down Sugarloaf Street. And North Main Street, too. Yeah, North Main Street as well. We didn't touch South Main Street very much, did we?
No, and that's funny because Skippy, what's his name? Malone, I can't remember. She's not here tonight, Sam.
Yeah.
Samantha's father owns, he owns the big property in the marijuana overlay district. He's got Atlantic Home Furnishing that.
Oh, he's the guy that has the two offers for $2,000 a month. Yeah.
And he really likes the idea of working at the South Main Street.
Yeah.
He sees those houses are changing hands rapidly, they're for sale over and over again.
Yeah.
And he thinks that he's somebody who might do something, actually. And so that's an interesting, last Monday night, he was talking on and on and on, he's got all rolling on that, and I thought, and he was home that way, just to check it out.
Industrial uses right now, commercial or?
Well, it's,
No, along here it's
Yeah,
residential.
yeah.
And in here there's industrial.
I mean, then some of them are really nice houses, but some of them have turned over a number of
Yeah.
times already, so it's like
Right.
some of them are old homes that people have.
Well, there's
So
two
there's
sets.
some interesting
Yeah.
potential there.
Yeah.
So, and accessory apartments in the village center area, in existing homes, also seemed pretty well supported. Okay, so is that good in terms of a general?
Yeah, sounds like it.
This is this really big graveyard, right?
No, that's the
Oh, this is the graveyard.
Yeah, that's the Oxford.
Sorry, this is the graveyard.
It actually has a frontage on South Main.
No,
No,
it doesn't.
No.
That's my driveway.
Yeah,
They think
so-
it's frontage, but it's my driveway.
That's your driveway?
Is that Sugarloaf Street?
No, this is.
that's
That's
Coates
the
Ave.
zoning.
Oh, no, okay, wait a minute. There
It is, it doesn't feel like, this is I don't know why.
My
the Oxford looks
driveway is right there. This is, no, it's not Jewett Avenue.
It's just,
It's just my
just his
driveway.
driveway.
When it gets
It
out to
really looks
when
like,
it gets out to the purple, it becomes Jewett Avenue. But this is actually a piece of land that comes across a wetland.
Yeah.
And it's not
it
been
doesn't look
accessed.
like it. It
But
doesn't.
Yeah,
the
and this
property
is
is
all
there as though it
buffer
could be if they ever
for the
did
wetland.
anything.
Yeah.
And I don't know what
Really,
they're,
the property actually feels like it's very.
what do they call it, Blacksmith's Brook or something, I don't know.
But there are houses on both sides of the street here.
And there's no road there, and it's wetlands. And it's, that's that.
Like the cemetery?
What's that?
The cemetery is in here.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
good. So this is why this is protected.
cemeteries back there?
That's
It's
a slope.
protected, I'm not sure. Oh, no, it
That's
could be
cemetery.
slope.
I think
Yeah.
it is a slope. No,
I
that's
don't
not a
know.
cemetery.
Well, there's a cemetery, and then there's a gully, a gorge like between them.
Yeah.
And then there's another one on the other side.
There's 2 church cemeteries on both sides.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's this line going through down there is the brook here.
It's back here. There's one cemetery back there, between there and west, isn't there?
It's down, I don't know.
Well, that's a big hunk of piece of
What's
property.
Porter,
That's-
is this Porter
This is
thing here?
farmland in here. I think somebody has their fields in here.
Yeah, there is some
Doc
farmland.
Schmidt owns a lot of land back there.
Yeah, and I think he's, exactly, I think that.
Yep.
That's where the new road is gonna go in.
Will they put a new road in there?
Yeah.
Oh, they better.
There you go.
She was on the Pine Board for a long time.
But that purple thing right there, on this side here is the new entrance to the
This is,
DPW.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right by.
yeah, yeah.
And how about the description for Route 5 and 10, is that, we were talking about this area, is that,
What did you see there again?
well, it, desire to fill in, because right now there's not really much residential here, as far as I know. So it was to make it more mixed use, add housing, so
North Main
this
Street?
area kind of thing here.
The Douglas Gallery,
Yeah.
Oh, Greenfield Road,
Um,
5 and 10.
Yep, so to have some mixed use.
There's a couple properties for sale on
Yep,
there. We
there are.
cut
Is
that
it?
one property in half for Jeff Copsick.
Oh.
Remember that, now he's selling that. So, and those are,
Mhm.
And this actually, just to let you know, as part of the open space and recreation plan development, we had a forum back in the spring. And this area was identified as, like, one of the things we focused on was not wanting 5 and 10 to turn a stretch. Yeah, a strip of commercial development. And so there was support in that process to kind of concentrate some development here and have it be mixed use and add some residential to it. So it kind of mirrors what was supported in the workshop this time for housing.
oh, before, this is all before Hillside.
Mhm, yeah, before Hillside.
or kind
So
of
I was thinking up
encompasses.
here, that's where those new places, yeah. And this is,
I think this is mostly the C2
This is-
district.
yeah, it is
Hillside
C2.
here.
Yep. I was thinking from here up.
Mm.
Is it a little more challenging topography?
It's up and down, but, yeah.
But, so.
There is a,
Wicked time, okay, this is the drive-in,
Okay, yeah.
okay, and
Yankee
then,
Candles thing.
yeah, okay, so then you're going along here. North Hillside, that's Butterflies.
Yep.
Yeah, this must be the doctor,
Oh, okay,
Doctor's
and this
offices.
is where Walt's going
And
back and
Walt's
forth, yeah,
going
yeah, yeah,
back
back
behind
over
there, and
here,
Greg's
yeah,
is
yeah,
over
yeah,
this
yeah,
side,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
one thing that's not on here that
And
should be.
the bus
is
garage is on the other side, is a big piece of property there.
Railroad.
Yeah,
It's right there.
yeah.
'Cause that's,
So building up this is a little bit more of a, as singling this out, the properties I was thinking of up here,
Mm.
because there's some, but that makes
Is
more,
that the
that makes
area
more
that they
sense.
want to put the propane in?
Yeah,
Well, that's already pretty much done from what I saw. when I
they're just
drive by
moving
there.
it from one, yeah, one side
Yeah.
to the other.
The area is pretty much developed now and done. At least it looked that way.
But it leaves that other property open now. again.
Yes, yeah.
That's,
Yeah, that's over there by the garage, by the Morgan, the old Morgan bus garage, yeah.
all right, so those are kind of the general goals, areas.
and that was from recreation, they decided, they were thinking about that?
Open space and recreation plan,
Open
we
space.
had a public forum for that.
Right.
And it was funny, because they wanted, well, Lynn's been involved in that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
They kind of wanted to get at the same thing that we're more directly getting at with this plan, which is where would you support new housing, where do you not want housing, et cetera. But from an open space perspective, so the kind of the flip side of it.
Or don't you?
Right, so that's why we were, or more, where can we put development so that we protect open
Right,
space,
right, so you
basically.
don't have it elsewhere.
Okay, so we can, so I can write up, I can write up some goals based on what we just talked about that you can review
Mhm.
next time. And then the affordable housing production goal is just what the state sets out for Deerfield, which we already talked about way long time ago, which is 11 units in 1 year would get you a 1-year certification. If you do 22 units within 1 year, you would have a 2-year certification. That's basically what that is, the affordable housing production goal. So it's already outlined for you.
Sure.
So then, what we can talk about, since we have time, is the more specific implementation strategies, which you've been bringing up all along, such as zoning.
Well, just the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it takes a long time. I mean,
Yes,
for instance,
yeah.
if you wanted to try to get this on the next annual meeting, I don't know how you do it. It would have to be a year off before the
Well,
zoning.
that's fine. That
You know, so
yeah.
how do you get those goals accomplished in this year
Yeah.
without the zoning? That's the thing I don't.
Well, no, it's probably not going to be. It's a 5-year plan, and right. There may be some things, and this is something we can talk about too. Is identifying kind of the time frame for some of the
That
different
would be good,
strategies would be
yeah.
good. So there'll be some things that are more short term, and then other things that are going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah, like, I mean, you know, what do you want to change? Maybe you could change some of the zoning now and do something, you know,
Yeah.
but.
I mean, it seems like, so for instance, it seems like there's a lot of support for revising the accessory apartment bylaw. That might be something you could tackle sooner. We can talk about that, but, you know, and that's one implementation strategy. Then others that might be kind of bigger and take more kind of public outreach and effort, may take a couple of years.
Who would you focus in on some of these co-housing developments? Who would you be looking at to do that?
Co-housing developments?
Yes.
That's gotta be a developer.
Yeah,
This
it
is
would just
basically
be,
It's actually pretty special.
That's what,
Special.
yeah.
well, that's what I thought. That, you know, so,
But you also have some of the, I mean, you've got some co-housing developer consultants here in the valley.
mhm.
Right, 'cause it probably would be already. I mean, that was the thing when Marilyn was saying, I don't have that. Do it. I mean, I think it's a kind of a, you know, it's an investor thing. They have to get a consortium together. I have a friend who's in that one in Northampton, and she was so excited she was in on the ground floor. Or the Solar Way, you know, in Greenfield.
In
That's
Greenfield,
another
yeah.
one that. And
That's not co-housing.
that's right. It's condominiums. It's real life condominiums. It's real life condominiums. It's not Canadian.
Not Canadian
condominiums.
condominiums.
I'd like you to write down
That's it. I think
these
the Canadian-
definitions of these terms.
That's
that
why
you
we're kind of asked that. Though. I know.
would you make up a
Canadian.
little book of the?
Well, actually, Solar Way may actually be really a truly Canadian
Well,
condominiums.
I don't know these terms, so maybe you should
Making
write
them
them
up.
down.
Yeah.
So what we can talk about, so there's two things and also to get to your point of who's going to do this and everything. Obviously, changing zoning so that it supports the type of development that you want to see in town and allows, you know, private developers to come in and do what your zoning is kind of supporting them to do. That's one method. And then another thing that we do have to, again, identify is town-owned sites that the town maybe would issue an RFP or you know, try to bring in a developer to develop a specific type of housing.
There's no question. There's interest in senior housing. There's
Yeah.
interest in
That's the
affordable
thing,
senior
yeah.
housing.
Yeah.
So we need to identify that, and then, and again, privately owned areas where the town would kind of encourage kind of redevelopment or new housing. So
And the other thing that's going to get traction is rehabbing existing. I mean, that is going to that will bring some interest. There's a lot of interest in that,
Okay.
for good or bad. I mean, sometimes I think that, you know, everybody thinks that's going to be the answer. If we could just keep people where they live and that would make them
Right,
happier.
right.
And but I do think that would give the momentum, some momentum to it,
okay.
to this project. If we did have some projects, but, you know, or we could back some projects, find some ways to back projects that.
Yeah, somebody mentioned the fact that they tore a house down right on Sugarloaf Street there,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
that farmer, the
Yeah.
Chang or
Yeah.
whatever, so there's an empty lot there now.
Mhm.
So there's a perfect place to do something.
Has water and sewer?
Yeah,
It's
right,
about
yeah,
9/10 of an acre.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess I'm trying to think the best strategy. Do we want to talk about zoning first?
Sure.
Well, I think your idea
And
of
then
some kind of
specific
timeline, if you could, to me, we're dealing with something extremely global here. And maybe if we centered in on something,
Yeah.
I
that,
think
that's
right. Well, that
that's-
certainly makes sense for you and me.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
This is a
that's
project
right.
that, you know,
Yep.
that you and I can.
yeah. So I think that would be something that would make it easier to
Yeah.
take on, you know.
So I'm going to pass out, this
Now, I
is
was gonna
really
ask you,
big.
is this a comprehensive, so throw
Yes.
away all the old ones?
Yes. Everybody else knows. This includes everything that's written so far.
Okay,
So what I'm going to point you to is the zoning section, which we already reviewed, but it will just help us go through this.
okay.
So let me find that section.
And we just heard that we spent all our money for this fiscal year.
Oh, my God.
For the,
For the CPA?
with the
Our
planning.
FERCog. Oh, for FERCog.
FERCog money.
What is
It's
it?
gone.
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she was
Pat
there on
told me.
fumes at the annual meeting.
Yeah. The last 15 minutes were on her.
Yeah,
I can't even talk to her about Deerfield. so.
Right, right. You're not allowed.
She sits behind me.
yeah.
Um,
Okay, so where is this?
all right, so
section?
let's see. Starting on, starting on page 54 is the summary of your current permitted residential uses. So I can go through and just point out some of the things that I had identified as constraints to housing and affordable housing development. The first one was multifamily homes, your definition, which is currently limited to 3 units. So the idea there.
You know, that's interesting because I always had in mind that 3 units were not allowed, that only 2 were, but you say somewhere it says 3. I mean, I
They're
remember
allowed
you
by
talking
special
about it.
permit.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
And only in Central Village District.
Right,
right.
Right.
But even in Central Village, it's a special. I don't
Yeah,
think,
even in Oxford site, it's special permit, the expedited permitting district.
Well, that's a district all of its own, so,
Yes.
yeah.
So is that something that you feel the town should do?
I don't know
Revising?
how that would be a very hard sell, I think, in town. It's funny.
I mean, the issue is that you're limiting housing development to 3 units in a structure.
Yeah, it's
So if you really do want, higher density in certain areas, it's just going to be really difficult.
Well, I don't think that what we put up the other night at that
Mhm.
meeting was going to make it really dense. I think it was just going to fill in. I think it was more infill than density. It
Right.
looked like it because you got such a small
But some
map
of
and
the-
such big flags that,
Some
you
of
know.
the examples, though, that we talked about essentially wouldn't be able to be built because they're more than 3 units in a structure. So, reusing the rectory or St. James Church,
Right.
you would be talking about putting 3 units, and that's it.
Mm-hmm,
So it just limits what can be done. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
There's that's a
Yeah.
really good example right there.
Right, right.
I'm trying to think let me, I'm sorry. Trying to think of a best way to approach this.
Well, I think your idea of the accessory apartments and,
That's a start.
and rehabbing housing in the CVRD is a good thing, and maybe even locating some duplexes. You know what I mean? Start out with that, and then you'd almost want to have. I don't know if you could encourage investors to do something and then try to bring it in and then seeing what they want and looking at what needs to be changed at that point, but
So
I
in
think-
CVRD,
I think it's right that just on North Main Street alone, the people there were fighting imaginary new housing on the street. It didn't matter if they were there.
We created one lot.
One lot.
We created one
Well,
lot.
actually two.
Yeah, potentially two.
Yeah, there was two on North Main Street on the west side.
One obvious one.
But the one on the, well, I don't even know if that's an obvious one. You mean on the corner of Jackson Road and 5 and 10?
Busada, it's the only one I.
Oh,
can think of.
Busada's is, yeah, that's
the only
definitely.
obvious one, boom, boom, you
Yeah,
can see it.
that was two, yeah.
But
Do
she
you-
would have had that otherwise.
does
Yep.
it make more sense to
And it
pull
was
out the
the
zoning
zoning
map
thing.
and do this by zoning district? And say, well,
Well, that's eventually what's going to have to
what
happen.
should change within this zoning district?
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to, because this gets
I think
technical
I think our majority numbers of what I saw you had here is the CVRD. I mean, that's what you're talking
I
about.
do too, I think that's what the emphasis is.
Yeah.
But again, you want to tread gently because that's
Right.
also historic, it's also where your homes, are,
Right.
you know, that you're.
But that's the place, you've got the older homes where people could have a second apartment in them and, you know.
Have you guys ever permitted an accessory unit?
Not since I've been on the board. I don't know.
Lynn,
What's that?
Lynn.
Did she get
Well,
that
she has an
permitted?
accessory
What's that? Did
Yeah,
she get it?
yeah, she's got a permitted accessory apartment, and she did jump, she's a perfect example. They had to attach it to their house, and
Oh.
they had a hell of a time, and there's even some things might not be,
Well, I don't, yeah, we don't need this, yeah. I know.
but she had her,
What? I don't know.
no, it's a
Anyways,
lovely, opportunity for her parents-in-law to stay with them
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, they don't pay, it's not.
It's
like-
great
But
to
anyway,
have in-laws
yes,
living with you.
that's what it, yes.
That's why you have the
That's
separate
on-
apartment.
That's on there.
I know. But my wife will hear it, but my mother-in-law won't.
Okay, so for example, CVRD.
I think I would.
So currently in the CVRD, you have single family is allowed by right, two family is allowed by right, multifamily, which is 3 units, is allowed by special permit. Dwelling unit incidental to commercial or industrial use is not allowed. Flexible development, conservation development are allowed. Accessory apartments are special permits. So that was one suggestion that I added to this, which I forgot to add before, was considering making accessory apartments by right. But then within the language of your bylaw, you can specify things like parking requirements or any other concerns that people may have with adding accessory apartments. So that's a change that could be pursued. Assisted living is special permit, and boarding house is special permit. One thing that I want to just discuss, and I brought some illustrations to illustrate it, which are now gone.
Mine.
I don't know, I had a pack that I brought in. I'm just not very organized tonight.
Your level of not very organized beats anybody else's level of
I
disorganized.
didn't have a lot of chance to think about this. I know it must be under the maps. So, Paul, you had a question way back then about what different types of density looks like. Because one of the things that I had mentioned in the past was something called, where is it? Compact neighborhoods, which is
Okay, yeah.
the description on page 58.
This
That's a tool that the state has developed that towns can adopt. It's a zoning district. It can be an overlay district, or it can be just your underlying zoning district that meets the requirements. But basically, it's appropriate for, they want to see this in kind of downtown mixed-use areas of concentrated development, but where there's where it's still primarily residential, so not real commercial. So that would be appropriate for CVRD. But in it, you have to allow, as of right, two-family or more, so you could just limit it to two-family, or single-family homes at densities of 4 units per acre for a single-family home and 8 units per acre for a multi-family home, which could be a two-family. And basically you require a certain percentage of new units to be affordable. 10% of all units constructed within the area should be affordable units. And basically, if your town adopts that zoning, meets the requirements for a district in your town would get, Deerfield would get preference on different grant applications, state grant applications like MassWorks, and also you would have a better chance of kind of defending a 40B development, even if you hadn't met your affordable housing production goals, because it shows that you're committed to producing affordable housing by passing that zoning. It doesn't guarantee it, but it's a good step in that direction. So anyways, that's something to consider for either.
Well, as you're talking, I think I like the overlay type thing rather than districts, especially for the larger things like the conservation and the co-housing. I mean, those, I don't know if those would go well in the central village, but everywhere else it might.
Well, and in terms
that's all
of
residential agricultural anyways, right? Yeah, so that still fits in. Now, what were you had some pictures?
well, yeah. So you had asked a while back, I think when we were talking about this, what is 4 units an acre look like? So I tried to find examples in Deerfield of that meet about that zoning.
Say it again.
So one is from South Deerfield, so this is 4 units per acre. So it's a quarter-acre lot. So I'll just pass them out.
Oh, they're all the same?
Yeah, on one side, there's an example from Old Deerfield Village, and on one side, there's an example from South Deerfield. So just so you get a sense, in South Deerfield, I was looking at the assessor's maps, and quarter-acre lots are on the smaller side at your average, but in general, you're about between a quarter acre to a half acre, definitely.
Where's this location here?
So this is Mountain Road, just off of Sugarloaf Street.
Okay, Mountain Road up here?
Yep.
Okay, yep.
So,
Where?
like when you first get on
Right up
Mountain
here.
Road.
On the other side of if you get the
Oh,
small
right.
side of
Okay,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the type of zoning, that's the type of density that particular,
Okay.
particular zoning would require.
And is this,
That's quarter-acre zoning, huh?
And then in Old Deerfield, this is an example from Memorial Street.
This house is ridiculous, number 22.
which one?
Ridiculous house, 22. I looked up buying it a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
And the current people are crazy.
So that's just to give you a
They've
sense
redone
of
it
if you
twice.
know,
Only did it for 3 months, they've done it twice.
if you know those areas, that's what that
Yeah, what that looks
density
like.
is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that may be,
And so this is a
Something to
quarter
look at.
acre along here. These are old houses, or not all old houses. But on Well Street, that's similarly.
yep, some of those are just deeper, so they have,
So they don't
A
count,
little
but
bit
in
more.
fact, that's really, it's still,
yeah, it's still the same look in terms of when you are walking down the street or
Except for the
driving down
depth of the
street.
lot. It's the
Right, they
same.
have a little more space behind
because
them.
this actually, 45 is privately owned,
Mhm.
belongs to 23.
So that's a zoning,
That street, and then this side has to be pretty close to, that's interesting. But this on this side of the street, is actually, some of that's farmland.
Mhm. Yeah, I tried to pick areas where there was like consecutive, because it does vary. And some streets are closer to like half acre lots throughout the street. Others are, there's a lot that are around like a third of the lot, like 0.35 acres,
Well, I know
in
in
South
Greenfield, a lot of
Deerfield.
the streets are 66 by 120 or 118.
Yeah, mine's 0.15, which is plenty big enough for me.
Are you in Greenfield?
Yeah,
Oh, whereabouts?
Birch Street,
Okay, yeah. Mhm.
it's near the Birches
Yeah, well,
condominiums.
that's not bad.
So I'm a little
But most of the
biased
lots, I
when
think,
talking
are
about
like
these
60
things.
Most of the lots down there are 66 feet wide, and then were 120 feet deep originally, but they're not anymore because the town took half of it for the road, or, you know what I mean, took the front of it for the road and whatever. But
Yeah, I mean,
those are
South-
small lots.
Yeah, South Deerfield's interesting because it, so those areas in Greenfield were built a little bit before, when often in-town lots were narrow like
Yeah,
that.
deeper.
And you have that, the housing, like my house is the traditional, living, dining, kitchen, long. And South Deerfield, some of your streets filled in more like in the 20s and 30s, and you have more like bungalows, and it's when housing started to change and was a little more modern, and the house and the lots are more square, and it's really interesting. I love bungalows.
You are?
And they have beautiful ones.
Bungalows, but then you have some of the older ones, especially along like Sugarloaf Street,
Street, yeah.
where you used to have the farmland behind, and you still
Yeah.
have the farmland behind some of them.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's pretty unique, riding around in the village center. So anyways, that's just to give you an idea of what this is talking about in terms of the density.
So is this West Street, is that right? Or is this
That's probably, yeah, you're right. It's
Yeah.
West,
West Street
yeah,
right
'cause it's
there.
across the street.
on Mountain Road? And this is the Nationalist Catholic Church here? Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, you look at the parking lot up in the buildings.
Oh,
What's this over here called?
what's what?
At the end of Mountain Road. I can't place
I
it.
don't know.
34.
Oh, is that an apartment house?
That's what I was wondering.
I think it is. I think that's got a bunch of apartments in it.
And then,
I'm trying to think of how many there's there. There's
it's on the
a
other-
bunch of them there.
Oh,
on the side street.
Yeah.
I'm not where yet. I think so.
I think there's almost, I don't know. I don't remember how many are there, but there's quite a few.
all right. Okay, more zoning.
So, yeah.
Well, this is something that we should bring up to the planning board. I mean, if there's already a program out there.
Yeah, and I can do a little more work in assessing what you would need to change specifically, either in CVRD or even Oxford, to meet the requirements, to see how much of a change is it from what you currently have, because it may
Right.
not even be that big of a change. So I can work on that and kind of narrow it down to where it might make the most sense if the town's interested. All right. Okay, and then accessory apartments, seems that's agreed upon that should be improved, in terms of the zoning. Conserva-
Okay.
yeah, so that's what we were just talking about.
Right, but it's in, there it is, it says, so what is a base zoning? I see, the overlay zoning district.
What page is this you're looking at now?
It's at the bottom of page 58. But it says neighborhoods can be base or overlay zoning districts.
Right, so.
What's base?
So base zoning is just what is on the map now. It's kind of your underlying zoning district.
So
Over,
your RA or your CBD, that's your base.
yeah, that's currently your base
Okay.
zoning.
Okay.
So you have two options. You could modify your base zoning to meet these requirements.
I
And you
see.
wouldn't
Or
necessarily have to change the name of
overlay
your
with-
zoning district or anything, you would just, it
Change
would,
the number.
yeah, it would just
Right.
meet the requirements. Or, you could have an overlay, which
Yep.
typically an overlay, like, doesn't cover an entire district, because then it doesn't make sense
No, you just
necessarily
change
to
the
have an
base.
overlay.
Right, right.
But it may cover a portion of it where it makes the most sense
Yeah, but I think
to
you-
add to
Yeah.
the zoning for that particular area.
I'm thinking that the zoning in CVRD is going to be different than the zoning in the RA. I'm just guessing that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? So an overlay would be hard to do, to make it generic amongst all the zoning districts.
Well, no, that's why overlays are used to more zone, to kind of identify
purpose.
areas
I like what you
for
just said.
certain, and it could be, you could have an overlay district that has several locations, and it could all comply with the same, text in your zoning, or you could just have one overlay. So it would be more of looking at your current, the area where this would be most applicable, which is probably the South Deerfield area, and seeing if either your CVRD or EPD or districts within that could meet these requirements by just tweaking the base zoning. Or if it's more appropriate to identify kind of a smaller area within those larger districts that you want to meet this
Or you
requirement.
could increase the number of, you could increase with a special permitting. That would be so easy. I mean, this is what we just did with medical marijuana.
Yeah.
You increase it, but keep the control.
Yeah, with this, you would have to allow the residential uses by right, but you could have a site plan review
Site plan
process.
review,
Um,
Yeah, not
So-
necessarily special permit.
Yeah,
site
so you
plan.
wouldn't have the discretionary review, but you would have the site plan.
Yeah, you might identify the areas for the heritage condos as a place to do compact overlay.
Right,
Because that's an area where you say, well, that could probably accommodate the more
more
dense-
compact, right,
But only this
The
little
whole-
patch here, not
right.
the whole
the whole area,
section.
right.
Okay. So, I think we have about 10 minutes. So some other suggested changes had been, to revise the dwelling unit incidental to commercial or industrial use, to better allow for mixed-use development. Currently, it only allows one unit to be incidental to a commercial or industrial use. So that, the analysis had said, consider allowing more than one unit to be within the structure when enough space is available to facilitate mixed-use commercial districts. And also allowing units above or attached to commercial uses in the expedited permitting district. Because right now, the zoning for the expedited permitting district, which is Oxford, does not allow dwelling unit incidental to commercial or industrial use. So it's not really allowing the mixed-use development that people have seemed to support there. I mean, within the same structure, basically. So that was one thing that could be improved.
So at the Oxford site, if they wanted to do a ground floor retail and an upper level apartments, they couldn't do it.
Right,
Not currently,
unless it was just one unit above.
right,
Um,
owner residence.
Right. So that's why that was pointed out, because it just seems contrary to what,
Everybody's saying about what they should do.
yeah.
Right, isn't that,
Um,
what did Greenfield do? Didn't they end up, did they change that, or what was that? Wasn't there something?
I'm not actually that familiar with
Familiar with
Greenfield
Greenfield?
zoning, because we don't do a lot of
Yeah.
zoning work with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's examples from other smaller towns of how you could word that to, I forget exactly how it's worded, but to basically allow dwelling units above commercial
Commercial, right.
uses, and
Because
say where
the
you would
model
want
is just the one that's above. That's the model. So people are kind of basing it off of a super old
Right.
Right.
Go ground floor, a grocery, and you lived upstairs.
You lived upstairs, right,
Right.
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So everybody's right, that's all right, it's a super old model, right?
Okay. Okay, let's see here.
And that's why it's only one, because otherwise the downside is what? The uses are.
I don't know what the downside is.
The uses are opposite. I mean, people are mostly at
Hmm.
home in the evening and they're not home during the day. It's not,
I don't know.
there are those apartments that are at the end, I'm just thinking Greenfield too, there's the ones at the westerly end of town, Hapco above.
Olive Street, you
Oh,
mean?
you mean on Bank Row above Magpie and?
Olive Street?
No, those ones are new, that's what I was
Yeah, those
thinking, I
are
think those were
rehabs.
changed, those are rehabs. But there've always been some housing over Magical Child and.
Oh, yeah.
There's always been that.
On Federal Street, you mean? Is
No,
that where that
on
is?
Main Street.
It's on Main
On
Street.
Main Street?
Mhm.
Okay.
So, but there was some zoning change in order to, I don't know, that's what I just
Well, some of
remember
those I
vaguely.
think are.
Well, they're gonna have elevators on some of those to use the upper floors, though.
Oh, SROs?
Yeah.
They are, yeah.
Some of those are,
Yeah.
Which would, that's a little different, but yeah.
But, and have been they've been there for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big thing for downtowns. I mean, Deerfield's kind of interesting because it's villagey, but like a lot of downtowns have focused on bringing housing back to the downtown
Right.
to help revitalize, to
Right.
have people in town.
Live there, shop
You have a
there,
lot of
eat
people
there.
living already kind of close to the village center, but this could add to, add to that vitality
Right.
by allowing.
Now, aren't there apartments
More
up over the market there and the Jerry's place and all that?
Are there?
There's
That's-
already
yeah.
apartments
Those are the
there.
few, right,
Yep.
right.
Yeah, they're already there.
12 units.
Is that what it is? Okay, I knew there was,
Are they under any program at all? They're just low?
Private owner,
They're just private owner?
Mhm.
you know, like McGrath.
Okay. Conservation subdivision, there were some recommendations about that. That would apply to mostly to the RA district. One way to add an affordable housing component to any new subdivisions would be to require,
thank you.
either require or incentivize, developments that are over, say, 10 units include 10% affordable housing units. That's a pretty common, thing a lot around rural towns is to require, a certain number of new subdivision homes to be affordable. So that's another recommendation. And let's see here.
Has Deerfield had many large subdivisions over
Crestview.
Yeah, when you look at that,
the elite?
I didn't bring it with me.
Mansions are.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
I didn't bring it with me, but the land use change map that I have, it's from 1970 to 1999. You really can see, they're not all huge, but like here, like there's areas, especially over here, where there were, subdivisions
yeah.
happening during that time period.
But nothing
these
lately,
two.
nothing lately, though.
So,
No, housing is,
I'm watching houses go up in Whately down near Hatfield and stuff. They're getting a lot of houses.
are they?
On 5 and 10 there, there's at least 3 or 4 new ones in the last few years.
yeah, so this, I actually need to look at Deerfield subdivision regulations. I couldn't find them online, so I need to, Pat probably has a
I'm
copy.
sure she does.
We could bring on.
But anyways, within the zoning is where you would have the affordable housing requirement or.
In fact, Pat should be able to run them off for you.
Yeah.
They're in our book, right?
Right. I bet she can recite them.
Yeah,
Probably can.
At this point,
Yeah.
so, okay. And then going along with that is a broader, kind of a broader idea of inclusionary zoning, kind of across the board in your zoning, which would instead of just having it be within subdivisions, or just within your compact neighborhood zoning, if you have an inclusionary zoning bylaw, you basically will require any developments in town that create more than a certain number of units have, 10% affordable units or 15% affordable units or whatever you want to set it at. And so that would apply to any housing development in town. And that's something that a number of towns in Massachusetts have put in place. And that helps with, the main thing about some of these zoning tools is, one, it provides new affordable housing. It also helps you, in terms of your 10% goal, under Chapter 40B, at the next U.S. decennial census in 2020, the state's going to base your percentage of affordable housing units on the total year-round housing units in town. So if you have new housing units being created, but none of them are affordable, your percentage is going to go down. You're going to be going backwards. So the idea of putting some of these zoning measures in place to kind of require or strongly incentivize, depending on what the town decides to do, new affordable units along with market rate units is to help at least maintain your current percentage, but hopefully build on it. So that's one of the big reasons for implementing some of these things, is it can help you maintain at least your percentage. So that's the zoning discussion.
Well, the sooner that, you have something proposed that
Yeah.
the planning board can look at, and that's the better.
Well, I think what I'll do
And the timeline too, as to when
Yeah.
you really want to get it done by, that's perhaps more important.
So for next time, I'll try and write up more specific. I'll write up the goals that we talked about tonight to review, and then I'll write up some specific strategies, draft strategies based on the zoning discussion. So they would be zoning-based strategies, and then I can maybe take a stab at the identifying specific sites.
It might be even
based on
better,
what we
even
talked
good to
about.
do as well, Alyssa, is to plan time at the planning board.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Do a
The
little
next.
presentation.
Yeah, at the planning board meeting, yeah.
Well, the time frame for this, though, is we have to wrap this plan up by the end of December. So that's why so we need to decide. So I really have.
Get the ball rolling now.
I was planning on having one more meeting with the subcommittee to review those goals, review strategies, tweak strategies, add anything, and so that we can kind of finalize all that. Have a public review period where we get it out on the town website, let people know that it's out there for review, and then submit it to the state by the end of December.
2 more meetings? No, I'm not.
I was thinking one more.
Okay.
One more to finalize the goals and strategies.
Okay.
And then I can do all the work to get the plan up for review.
So then, what
And
you
then would just be
submit,
review online, it wouldn't be review at a
Right, yeah, because we did the public workshop, so it would be more getting the word out. I can send.
so what you want to submit to the state is something that would be the possibilities of what could happen, or are they cast in stone at that point?
Oh, no, the plan's never cast in stone, but it ideally will be a plan that the planning board supports the implementation strategies already, and you know what I mean, or at least the planning board members who have been involved in this.
But you see, you've got all the other board members too, and
Yep.
you can't.
We do not
yeah.
seem to convince them of anything.
No.
We're working on it, though.
Well,
I think it's
that's
just,
fine.
I think that the issue isn't, that we're kind of being, the issue is really that we need to make a presentation. So I think once
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
kind of a strategy, the timeline that we're, talking about, and we can bring this to them and.
Yeah, but
present
it definitely has to go before the board
That would
because
really.
Yeah.
because we're not going to be able to,
Well,
I
I think
don't-
presenting it to them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we
gives
can
them the
support
opportunity
it,
to
but
support it. Yeah,
yeah.
It's going to be voted on by a town anyway. No, we don't
Right.
make any changes, we just
Right.
recommend them.
Yeah.
We shape them and recommend them.
That's
so.
right.
and I forget, I don't have it with me, or maybe I do. I think in order for the plan does need to be either adopted or I don't know if I have that with me. I'm pretty sure the planning board and the board of selectmen need to kind of sign off on the plan.
We need to endorse it.
Yeah, you need to endorse it.
Because if you do, if the big one is, what we just discovered with the Prevere property, is that if we don't endorse it and it goes before the town, and they vote it down, you can't bring it back for
Yeah.
a terrible long period of time. It's devastating. So if you do have the board
Yep.
offer approval, it can come back again and again and again, even if the town votes it down.
Right.
So it is important that the.
Yeah, it's very.
We're not gonna meet till the beginning of December again.
I know.
So our next meeting will be whatever that Monday in December is.
Second, I think.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our next meeting.
So do you
I
want?
think of every question that's been asked today, it'll be those and more when you get there.
So you're saying that we should present to the planning board on December 2nd?
That's what I think.
I would say, if you've got to submit this in December.
I think that'll.
So
Yeah.
would that mean that we need to meet before then?
Yes.
To probably?
Yeah.
Before that,
Oh, well, well, I was planning on doing all this. I'm just trying to make sure I don't.
Yeah.
That would be fine.
2 weeks.
Okay.
And maybe have I mean, how long would your presentation take, do you think?
I mean,
It would be.
up to speed.
It's not
John's
going to be.
pretty up to
It's not
speed.
going to be all the
Yeah.
background stuff. I'm not going to do the background stuff again because I've done it like 5 times.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've done it to the planning board.
No, I
early
think
on. So
all
it
you're
would be
gonna be
the- it would
talking
be the
about is the
implementation.
zoning.
Yeah, it would be.
All you're gonna be doing is talking zoning
It
and
would be
what the
goals and
options are.
implementation strategies.
Yeah, that's all you're gonna be talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, because everything else is really not part of what the planning board's doing anyways.
Okay. And it would be that we need, I can double check on exactly what's needed, but whether it's a vote or just a letter or I forget.
And I think,
needed for
is
the
like,
planning
I was
board.
asking today, anything that you can, generalizations you can pull from that, from the map and pin project, that would be good to talk about,
Yeah.
because then that tells them what came out of that meeting.
Yep. Okay, that's fine. And I wonder if, does the Board of Selectmen, can we invite them?
Sure.
Because it would be really good to have them, because I
Yeah.
think
That'd
they'll
be
need
really nice, so we
to-
could do it all at the same time.
Yeah.
If we could get them
Yep.
there.
Yeah,
I don't think that would be that hard.
No.
okay.
Carolyn's pretty easy. I think.
So
Mark.
our Monday evenings is 2 weeks from today, okay, to meet as a subcommittee?
What's the date? Is that let's see, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th? Yeah,
It's a Monday
okay,
night.
I guess.
Is 6 o'clock okay, or do you want to do 7? I'm fine with 7, it's just we're doing 6 because of the planning board meetings.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, how much time are you gonna take? 'Cause
Well, it will be reviewing the goals that we talked about tonight. I'll have language for you to look at so that we can,
I'll talk.
I mean, I don't mind
Yeah.
6 o'clock. I don't mind. Do you mind 6 o'clock? 5:30? So that gives you half an hour. You can make it 6:30. I mean,
No, I can do it. It's just a matter of planning. I just
Yeah.
wasn't planning tonight, so
I know.
was
I
making
know.
dinner.
Well, I
time.
came a few minutes late
I
too,
told
so,
these folks, they don't live with me, but.
yeah.
so we can say 6 to 8, maybe we won't go to 8 if we don't have to.
I don't think you even want to say that.
Yeah.
So we'll do goals. This time I'll have written out goals. I'll have written out implementation strategies to review. And then if I have time, I can try to,
And anything you get that you can get to the planning board ahead of time too.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Email it to everybody
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
got
yeah,
it.
yeah, we can do that.
That would be good.
We'll do that, we'll strategize that
Yeah.
next meeting too.
Yeah.
See what can go ahead so they can review
Sure.
it. There are some that really will review
Yeah.
it before, or some won't, it's all right.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
so
also, I can give you some background detail on some of the sites that we've looked at.
that would be really good.
Because we've
Yeah.
got information on the rectory site, we've got
Okay,
Braeburn Road, even though that has some challenges, we've got.
You're right,
I
that's
thought that was a
town.
dead issue. No, it's still out there?
If you're gonna access it from Braeburn Road, then it's difficult, but it has potential for development. but you'd have to acquire a
Some
North
other
Main Street
North Main
entrance.
property.
Street, yeah.
Right there, opposite the line.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
right out here.
There's the
Yep.
the Chang Trust, the family, that site.
Okay.
That's here
That's-
somewhere.
Yeah, it's only about, it's less than an acre, but it's something.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
something. I think we should definitely look small as
And then
well
there's the
as
site
larger.
behind, well, there's the information I have on the rectory.
Yeah, that would be great.
Is it?
Chang family.
Oh, they still do.
And then there's the site that's behind the post office that my organization looked at 7 years ago.
Okay, that would be extremely helpful. And the other thing too is, yeah, like that's, I'm gonna have to talk with you about.
Bob Schmidt.
I'm sorry?
Check on the one by, yeah, Bob Schmidt.
I don't know Bob Schmitz.
Right here along South
If you
Main.
go down, no, not South Main, if you go down Sugarloaf
South
Street,
Main.
Sugarloaf Street, you go down Sugarloaf Street,
Yeah, right
and you'll
here.
see a lot
Right here.
a plot of land that's just wildflowers. Well, that's the front of it, and then it goes out behind,
I hadn't looked at that.
yeah.
This is-
So behind Bob Schmidt's house.
Well, no, but behind his property, it's to the, it is behind his house too,
To the
yeah.
west of, to the
8
west
acres.
side on.
The
yeah.
west side of his house, there's an open lot.
You'll see the open
It's all
lot. It's kinda
wildflowers,
like
well,
movable
it's
thing.
dead now.
Right. Missing two.
And then there's the big town site that sits on the other side of the bank. You could use use a very small part of it for a parking lot. But you've got a huge piece of land behind.
Oh, yeah.
Ball
The,
field, you mean?
Oh, no, we're here in San Antonio.
yeah, the livability plan,
You're talking about, but next to the bank?
Yeah, behind the bank.
It's behind
between the
all
bank
those.
and
That was
the-
supposed to be a parking lot, yeah.
yeah, the livability plan
Oh, the Leary lot?
has designs for expanding parking
Used to
there.
be the Leary house.
Yeah, there was some deal with Leader Lumber and that house next to Leader Lumber and that lot, that they were gonna do some reorganization.
This is my parking lot.
It's a very, I mean, it's a good sized lot for a
Yeah.
downtown area.
Yeah,
And,
Yeah, with
and yes,
nothing
you
on
might
it.
have your eyes on it for parking or for other uses, but,
yeah.
I mean, at some point, parking's gonna be an issue. It's not an issue yet, because.
Yeah.
well, if you do transit oriented development, it'll never be an issue.
Well, it would be a nice shared parking area though, because it is so central.
But for whom? At this
For
point,
businesses and.
Well, it had something to
and
do, I
residents.
know that Leader had some deal there with the town on that.
It basically allows you to, it allows
it's
you to
access to
have,
the back of those businesses.
yeah, it allows you to have some denser development right in the village center where you could basically nix the parking requirements, whatever your parking requirements are, if they have adequate parking in
Behind.
public lots,
Mhm.
so. But yeah, that is, it's a big space, you're right.
How many acres is it?
I don't know.
So then Chang, what was the other one? Braverman?
Rayburn.
Rayburn, I mean, sorry,
St. James Rectory.
Rectory.
That, somebody said something I think I heard something's going on there now. Something's just happening, I don't know. I heard rumors.
Not sure. And then we have
So
some of the
Saipan.
properties up here as on 5 and 10.
Okay.
There were a few, the restaurant, Gables Restaurant, and
Mhm.
that auction house.
Across the street.
Um,
Yeah, he came into our public meeting and wanted to be considered for that marijuana, but then they told him no. So he was there.
Yeah, that's right.
He owns both the Gables and the
And that, and he was
Douglas.
thinking that was a good place to do that.
Yeah,
Which I'm sure wouldn't have been bad, but we were.
yeah.
I think that as part of the plan, you have to identify at least, some list of sites
Yep.
that you might.
Yeah, I
Consider.
agree.
Yeah, the town
And that's one.
owners-
I mean, I
yeah.
think that's one. I think that's.
Yeah.
There's another piece of
Overlay,
property that, where they took the
possibility.
road out, where they took North Main Street out? You know that whole corner there where they turned North Main Street up to 5 and 10? And then there's that
Here?
whole area there. No,
Yeah, on the, between this and there.
no, up here. This is North Main, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, right in through here, the road used to come straight out,
Oh.
you see, and that whole,
Oh.
there's a
Right,
house and
yeah.
there's a whole.
long time ago, Paul.
No, I know.
But yeah, you're right, there's like a field.
But,
barely
but there's
remember
a,
that.
but there's a good sized area there. It's probably an acre and a half maybe.
Yeah. It
Of
looks like
land
there's
right
some
in there.
wetlands, but there might be space.
Yeah, there,
It's getting wetter and wetter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Okay, yeah, MJ, that would be very
That's it.
helpful. And I'll probably talk with you about more specifics in terms of implementation strategies, about just how to go about some of the things that I'm less familiar with, in terms of language and everything. Okay, so we'll meet in 2 weeks. I'll send out reminders about that.
I won't be able to be at that meeting. I have some other evening commitments.
On the 18th?
Right.
Well, I'll work with you on developping them, and then I'll send you what I have.
Yeah, but I think that given your time, you've got to keep moving. You
Yeah,
have
we
to-
do. And also, so review, if you have time, review the draft as of how it is now in terms of those sections, and let me know if, at the next meeting or before the next meeting, if you have any changes, comments, questions. I mean, it's all stuff that we've gone over before, pretty much, but this is like the actual written up, document. So it would be good to get your comments. And you'll notice there are like little notes in there still, things that I have to
Could I
fill in.
have some more of some copies of these for Diane?
Yeah, the draft plan and everything we looked at. Let's see.
Diane.
It is that time of year. It is the hand washing time of year.
Oh, is that the senior center lady? Oh, okay.
Demon.
Damon?
So, just the workshop results. Extra results.
Do you want one of these? Yeah. You can have mine.
I'll email, I can send you all of this electronically.
If you want
Oh,
to, you
wait,
can take
sorry,
this
that's
and-
the wrong packet. Sorry, Patty. No, I think it's fine, and I'll email Diana the electronic copies. And I can send you the more complete version of the workshop results, so you can actually see the unit counts, and how I broke everything down. It's just a lot.
I'm
to
sure
look
it
at.
is. I'm sure it is.
So I was trying to like simplify
I'm more
it.
interested in some kind of the digested version of it,
Yeah.
which has, just like bullet points for each area.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to do.
No, I know, you did it
So-
here. I'm just saying, but I'm thinking that, I think there's a lot of interest in town for senior housing.
Definitely.
So the more you can focus in on that,
From the surveys that.
the more you focus in on that, the better opportunity we're going to have to get something done.
Yep.